We human beings have the need for affiliation, a sense of belonging. We want to feel valued, like we matter to those around us. And since we want those things for ourselves, any fair-minded person would try to meet those needs in others. But you don't have to look very far to notice that not everyone is fair-minded. Some people take from others and never give back. A skilled sociopath, for whom there is no right or wrong, good or evil, knows that they can't just announce to the world who and what they are. They are experts at manipulation and able to pick up on social cues. They understand the need to keep their real selves a secret. They often do. But sometimes the truth gets out. And we should talk about that. I have a niece, Karen, and she had a friend at the church and adjoining school who had had a sexual incident with her youth pastor. And this youth pastor was rightfully let go over this, but in time he found another position, not as a pastor, but on the staff at a different school. Now, both the first and second schools are Christian, in name anyway, and one Protestant and the other Catholic. And his history became known, and he was fired from that school too. The irony is that Karen had a daughter of her own by then, and her daughter went to the second school. Now, I've changed a few details so that necessary to obscure identity, but the story itself is true. This has really happened, and there's at least one conclusion that can be drawn from this. Good churches who properly display the character of Jesus and the nature of God can produce more Christians. Bad churches who fail to do that can make more atheists. Churches can become centers for rigid and unyielding social rules governing behavior, and sometimes retail outlets for terrible and unjust politics. And Jesus is sometimes a mere mascot, a puppet used to give voice to that church's narrative. And back to the church with the errant youth pastor. I had left that church before this happened, and that's another story, but I'd sent my own kids to the school affiliated with that church in question, which I still regret. So we live and we learn, and sometimes very harsh lessons. And the worst disappointments in life, it seems, are when you've let yourself down. Some people find the strength to move on, but some people don't. Karen will probably never darken the doors of a church again, and I can't say that I blame her. She lives for her children and sent them, amazingly enough, to other Christian schools where they had some other troubles, but thankfully not of a sexual nature. They're in public schools now, flourishing and doing very well. Now, are there good Christian schools? Sure there are. Are there public schools that fail their students? Of course. There are bad doctors, lawyers, pastors, and police officers. So there's also institutions that let down the people who count on them. And occasionally, some of those are churches. And I'm not the biggest fan of denominations, but I'll give them this. They usually have guardrails about the staff they hire and oversight and accountability. Non-denominational churches have certain freedom, yes, but they lack accountability in some cases, and that exposes their congregations to risks. I'm not against good churches, and most of them are. They can band together people and resources and be of a great help to their communities, and in the process become better communities themselves. I've been in at least one of all of the above, at one point or another. So I'm speaking from some experience. But I'm talking to a special group of people. You. You've decided to figure out this problem now rather than just throw in the towel. And I admire that positive instinct in you. So you may wind up remaining in church. You may not. That said, there are a lot of churches and religious groups out there. Some of them very good. Some of them you might want to avoid. Chances are I'm not telling you anything new. Different churches have distinct personalities, and some of them might rub you the wrong way. Not at first, but it gets to the point that you start having more and more differences of opinions with the group. Though you may keep them to yourself, at least initially. Because no one else says anything, you're thinking, well, it's just me. But as time goes on, and there are more and more points of conflict, and what started out as internal private doubts became things that you said out loud, and then you find out that what you're thinking to yourself isn't tolerated when spoken. This could be what is called a legalistic form of Christianity, meaning there are a lot of rules that you can break without knowing that they're rules at all, because none of them are written down. But there is a definite behavior code at work. Soon you'll find yourself under subtle pressure to keep quiet. You might have voiced your opinion to someone you thought was a trusted friend, but you find out in very short order that this friend has a lot more loyalty to a group than they do to you, because suddenly people are treating you differently. It's not like war's broken out, but if you thought you were starting to see your group in a new light before, this confirms all your suspicions. You felt loved and cared for before, but now you don't know if all this love and attention is genuine or coming from a different place, a desire to control. What you think, what you do, what you believe. You might have heard alarm bells ringing in the background before, but now they're deafening. And the strange thing is, you may not even be angry about it. It can feel more like heartbreak. It can crush you. I left a church once that went in a direction I knew I couldn't follow, and it left me in tears to leave them. Now, this scenario doesn't fit everyone who's had a bad religious experience, and I hope it doesn't fit you. But if you recognize any part of this as your story, if you felt these things, if you know this pain, just know that you are not the only one that's walked down this road. I feel the worst for kids who may have been born into this, who might go to a school sponsored by such a church. They feel this pressure to conform coming at them from all sides, and as a child, they have neither the wherewithal or maturity to deal with any of it. Now, this is a thumbnail sketch of what's called a high control religion, and such places have taken the example of the life of Jesus and turned something good and loving and beautiful and may turn it into a harsh and ultimately unloving and legalistic incarceration. And if we're going to talk about religious deconstruction in a helpful, thoughtful way, we have to dissect this along with everything else. There's a lot to unpack here, and let me say again something I said before. It isn't God you're angry at. It isn't God you're disappointed in. It isn't Jesus who has left you confused, nor is it He who has broken your heart. There are people who have made a mess of this thing we call faith. People who are raised with a picture of an angry and vindictive God who takes pleasure in punishing you. And because that is the distorted picture of God they were presented with, that's the picture of Him they presented to you. Chances are they mean well. This is just how they understand God to be. So that's the face of God that they're showing you. We're going to take a look at the various types of control you might see in such a church and how they can affect you, not just in the years that you're involved, but in the years and even the decades after that. Sometimes in life you have to do things that are hard, and this is one of them. In the meantime, I want you to introduce you to a book that I found helpful and I think would be helpful to you. It's called When Religion Hurts You, and it's by Laura Anderson, a clinical psychologist. She began hearing more and more from her clients accounts of troubling experiences related to church as a religious upbringing. So many, in fact, that she soon realized that there were many more people experiencing this problem than she would ever be able to help on a one-on-one or personal basis. So she wrote this book. It was from her book that I got the term high control religion. And even if you haven't experienced this yourself, it's helpful to see this through the lens of somebody who knows the subject inside and out. Anderson is compassionate, very relatable, and considered an expert in the subject of religious trauma. Okay, that's it for today. This has been a lot, and I know that. I'm trying to give you the benefit of my experience, the things I wish I'd known, the questions I wish there had been somebody to ask. I'm not trying to put any ideas in your head that weren't already there. I'm just hoping that I can help, maybe, that I can help you make sense of them. This is Les from Springfield. Thank you for your time and attention.